All right, it is Monday, April 10th, 10:30 p.m. here on the West Coast, and this is something new I plan on doing on this channel. If possible, 2 days a week, I plan on putting out videos sort of in this podcast format where it might be 10 minutes long, it might even be 40 minutes long, but somewhere in that space, I'm going to be covering what's going on in the NBA and the NFL world. And as you guys know, I'm in the gambling space. So I'm going to be giving out my picks at the end of the videos probably. So for instance, today's video, I want to go through the NBA awards. The NBA voters put out their uh, votes. They were due today for MVP, Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man. So I want to go through all those because I made a list of my picks. I went through everything and came down to a few picks that might be different than others, but for the most part, I feel like there's some clarity this year on who should win. Also, I want to touch on the first round of the NBA playoffs and what I think about certain matchups. And at the end, I'll give you guys a couple looks that I have for the play in the first round from a betting perspective. So let's start with the MVP. For me, this was a little bit easier than it was maybe for others, but I like Embiid. You know, as you can tell with the thumbnail, I got Embiid winning MVP this season. I think he deserves it. Monster season. All three guys, Embiid, Giannis, and Jokic, had monster seasons. But I think Philadelphia just really cared about the regular season this year. And I know the Bucks have a better record than them, and Denver has a better record than them. But the way that Denver just coasted through the end of the season, the way that the Bucks played well even when Giannis wasn't around, the Joel Embiid, he just dominated and he played really well in marquee games and big matchups, particularly against Nikola Jokic, where I just feel like this is his season. And when you look back and you see how many MVPs did this guy win versus this guy, and you're going through the decade and you're checking, and I know people don't want to say that it doesn't matter, but you know, Embiid winning two MVPs, Jokic winning two MVPs, and then Embiid having one, that makes sense. Like that makes sense. And next season, I'm open to, if Giannis is balling out and Embiid is letting up a little bit, I'm open to giving it to Giannis again. But the way that it the way that it looks right now with Jokic having two, Giannis having two, if I were to give it to Jokic, and if the voters were to give it to Jokic and he were to win a third, and Jokic had three in a row, and Giannis had two in a row, and then Embiid just never got an MVP during this time period of being as dominant as he's been, it just wouldn't be right. It wouldn't sit right with me. Now, I don't like the propaganda that the Philadelphia media has been doing, trying to like kind of force voters into a position where they feel like they have to vote for Embiid, but maybe it was warranted. Like maybe Philly needed to give voters that push to make sure that everybody was on the right side of history here, because I do think it's fair once again for Embiid to have one MVP with Giannis having two and Jokic having two. It just wouldn't be right for Jokic or Giannis to have three, the other one to have two, and Embiid just doesn't have any. I mean, you could argue what Embiid does for his team defensively. I mean, it's better than what Jokic does. It might not be quite what Giannis does as a roamer. We know Giannis, he kind of plays a little bit of that Draymond role where he's just roaming around, and he's so athletic that he's like blocking shots and just disrupting everything as like a free safety. But Embiid is like the anchor on the defensive side. He just has stepped up to the moment every single time. He's hitting game winners. He's clutch. He's he's the scoring champ this season. So it's like Embiid really did it this year. So I have to go with Joel Embiid first. I put Giannis second, and I put Jokic third. Giannis, what he's doing with the best record and being a two-way guy, I just had to lean towards him being second. And Jokic at third, I mean, has there ever been a better third place in an MVP race? Like, I think the guy closed out the season averaging a triple double, or real close to a triple double. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So Embiid one, Giannis two, Jokic three for me. But for me, it's Embiid, and I kind of would think it's kind of crazy if guys don't end up having Embiid win, but I can understand it because Giannis and Jokic have just been so good this year, so it's understandable. Now, for Coach of the Year, um, this was one that was pretty easy. I think he might even win it unanimously. Mike Brown. Mike Brown was Coach of the Year for sure. I mean, everybody saw this coming. Just getting the Kings into the postseason for the first time in like over 20 years. I'm telling you, like, I grew up in the Bay Area. I've lived in the Bay pretty much my entire life, and the Kings have never been relevant. For the Kings to be relevant, that's just like it's brand new. For the Kings to actually beat the Warriors in some games and to compete with the Warriors and have a better record than the Warriors, it's like we've never seen this before. You know, I'm not used to this. The Kings have always been horrible. Like, I remember the Kings were like, you know, when Mike Bibby was like on his last legs and when they had like Kevin Martin and he was getting like 20, 25 points a game and they were just like bottom feeders in the league. Like, and the Warriors were bottom feeders too at that time, but like Sacramento was just always viewed as like, you know, it's Sacramento, but I'm happy for that team. And Mike Brown just did an incredible job. He really just flipped the switch in 1 year. So you got to give it to him first. I'm gonna go to third real quick. At third, I have Mark Dagnall. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The Oklahoma City head coach. For them to be basically sitting at about 500 this year, I think they finished at 40 and 42. I mean, that's an incredible job. They don't have a real center because Chet Holmgren is hurt. They don't have a real center. Um, they don't really have a real point guard. I mean, I look at SGA as kind of like a combo guard, really like a two who's like a bucket getter, like ultimate bucket getter. Um, but like, you know, they're just out there with like SGA and Josh Giddey and you know, both the Williams guys, like even Kenrich too. They got three Williams, but both the Jalen guys is what I meant. And they pretty much go out there with a bunch of like these wings who will pass the ball, will dribble the ball, will defend, and some of them can shoot, some of them can't shoot, but it's just interesting. They on offense they find a way to get 2 feet in the paint at all times, whether it's SGA, Jalen Williams, or Giddy. They just find a way to get into the paint. When they add Chet next year, it's going to be a really fun team, and I think if Chet is able to have like a pretty big impact on the team next year, and if they're able to win like even more games, like next year, if they go from 40 and 42 to like, I don't know, like if they win like 46 games next year, I probably would give him Coach of the Year next year, unless somebody did something incredible. I think OKC being on this rise, you would have to give it to him. I'm not going to give it to him quite this year. They're still under 500, but he did an incredible job nonetheless. But finishing second in Coach of the Year for me is actually Doc Rivers, and I know that sounds crazy. I've never been the biggest Doc guy. If anything, I've gotten on videos in the past and just criticized him nonstop. But what he's done this season, you really got to think about it. Like, they got off to such a shaky start. He puts Tyrese Maxey on the bench. He has him working as a six-man. Maxey ends up having an incredible season this year. He rewards Maxey and puts him back into the starting lineup once Maxey kind of figured it all out. James Harden, he got James Harden like being aggressive but still facilitating and getting the ball to Embiid in the best spots. He's putting Embiid in great positions where he really just can't get double teamed. Like, that's the big thing for Doc, is like getting Embiid the ball in spots where you can't double team him, and now he can just go to work, and no one player is going to be able to stop him. So it's just going to just elevate Embiid as a player. So I think Doc has done a really good job with this team. This team, with guys like Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker, you know, they have like these like veteran players who've been around for a little while, and those guys, it gets real easy for them to get complacent during the regular season. Even if these guys haven't won NBA championships, they can get complacent during the regular season. But for them to like start off so shaky and then turn it up, and pretty much like, I think I heard that they have the best record since December in the NBA, or since like mid-November they've had the best record in the NBA, and that's even with uh, the Milwaukee Bucks winning all those games in a row. Like, Philadelphia has just been hot. Like, I remember they went on a West Coast trip. Normally these East Coast teams come to the West Coast and they go on these West Coast trips to die. They go to the Lakers and they lose. They go to the Clippers and they lose. They come up, play Golden State and lose. That's what happens to most of these teams when they come from the East Coast to the West Coast, normally they're partying in the West Coast. That wasn't the case with the 76ers. They came here and they beat the Kings, they beat the Clippers, they beat the Lakers. I don't think that they came to Golden State in that same trip, but anyway, they just came to the West Coast and took over. It was very, very impressive. And although I don't think that highly of Doc from an X's and O's perspective, just the way that he managed these players and he managed their personalities this season, because it all could have went really bad for Philadelphia this year in the regular season, and the way that he tied it all together, I got to give him his credit. So, I give him a hard time when he makes mistakes, but he did a great job this season, and I have Doc as the runner-up for Coach of the Year. So moving on to Defensive Player of the Year, I got Jaren Jackson Jr. winning the award. I have Evan Mobley second, and I have Brook Lopez third. All three of these guys are great players defensively. Brook Lopez does have a lot of help. He does have Giannis. He does have Drew Holiday. He is playing in a system where he gets to be in that drop coverage, and basically his teammates are funneling players towards him. So I think that makes it a lot easier for him. So it's hard for me to give him the award. As far as Evan Mobley, you could argue deserves the award. I know a lot of the guys who look deep into the analytics and stuff like Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley is the best defensive player for the best defensive team in the NBA, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I just think Jaren Jackson is just the heartbeat of the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, just from an emotional perspective, just from an energy perspective, he's giving it all out every second, every minute on the court. And it's like every possession, he's just doing the most. And I know he didn't play a lot of minutes because he's always in foul trouble. And I know that because he's in foul trouble, there's a lot of possessions on the court where he's not able to impact the game because he has to sit out. But when he's on the floor, and, as long as he's on the floor to start games and as long as he's on the floor to close games, the Memphis Grizzlies get elite defensive production out of him. I mean, he blocks shots. He can switch on to guys. He can body up a bigger guy, smaller guy. Like, you can switch Jaren Jackson onto the perimeter and he'll stay with you, and then you could have Jaren Jackson battling it out with Anthony Davis, and he'll do as well as anybody else can do in the league. Like, Jaren Jackson Jr. is just a monster. Evan Mobley's great, but I just think Jaren Jackson has, he has some more bricks in his back pocket. He's a bigger guy. I think he can bang a little bit more. Jaren Jackson now having to play center because Steven Adams is out. That was very impressive to me, what he's been doing at center. Evan Mobley doesn't perform as well when he has to play center because he's not quite as big. Like, I saw Jaren Jackson go against Joel Embiid, and he got a monster block on Embiid, and he just played pretty solid defense on Embiid throughout that game. But when Evan Mobley was guarding Embiid, Embiid had a field day against him. So that's just one example of where Jaren Jackson having that size, but also having that mobility that Evan Mobley has, where I'll give Jaren Jackson the slight nod. So Jaren Jackson is the Defensive Player of the Year for me. Moving on to Rookie of the Year, I'm going to make this one quick. I got Pablo Banchero. It's not really close. Opening day, first game of the year, he bangs out on, who was it, Corey Joseph, and he gets the and one, and he's mean mugging in Detroit. He was just the one from the start, and I said from before the draft, I said throughout the previous NBA season, throughout the previous college season, I was saying this guy's number one pick. There's no real debate about it, and I understand Chet is a great player, and he has the potential to be really good in the NBA, and Jabari Smith closed out the season really well for the Houston Rockets, but Pablo Banchero is just different, bro. He can pass, he can, drive and handle the ball at the top of the key, real fluid for his size. He's a legit, 6'10" with size. He's stocky. You ain't bullying him. And the only thing that was a concern this season for him was the three-point shooting, but he had an injury in his hand, and once the injury healed up, he started shooting better from three. So it's not really a concern for me. I don't think he's going to be a knockdown three-point shooter, knockdown free throw shooter. He might not ever be that guy in his career, but he's going to be a guy that can get you 20 plus. He's going to be a guy that can get you 5, 6 plus assists per game, and he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to get you 7 plus rebounds per game, and he's going to do that for a very long time because he has a good head on his shoulders, and he's going to be able to either carry your franchise or be that number 2 guy that really buys in for your franchise for a long, long time. So you can't go wrong with him. So for me, he's number one. Jalen Williams, OKC, the one out of Santa Clara, he's number two. He can really score the ball. He's like a baby SGA. And third, I had Walker Kessler out of Utah. For the Sixth Man of the Year award, I had Emmanuel Quickly first, just because they really relied on him to be a spark plug over there in New York. And if he didn't provide that spark, I don't know what the Knicks would end up looking like. So he was real crucial to them this season. I just thought that he really impressed me with his play. I mean, he had nights where he came in for Brunson, and look, you're always going to miss Brunson, and I'm high on Brunson. I'm going to talk about my All NBA picks for the All NBA team in a second, but nights that they were missing Brunson, he was able to, like, in a different kind of way, more in like a scoring, perimeter shooting kind of way, he was able to kind of replace that and provide a little bit more speed than Brunson does. Like, it was different, but it helped make up for that production that you lost when Brunson was out. So I give it to Quickly one, but I have Brogdon second. And if you say Brogdon is first, I'm not too mad at it, but Brogdon second for me. You know what you're getting out of Brogdon. I don't really have to go into that. He is just a smart, good basketball player. And third, I have Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis surprisingly averaged close to 10 rebounds this season. I think he was at like 9.7. So yeah, basically like he averaged like 14 or 15 and 10. And he can knock down that three ball for a big. He can knock down the midi. He can get into the post a little bit and mess around in there. He's bought into the defensive end and really hustled and grinded for this Milwaukee team. When Giannis is out, he comes in there and tries his best to make up for that loss of production. So I got Bobby third. I thought he had a real good season, and I was kind of surprised. Like, I know Bobby Portis is like a good, valuable player for the Bucks, but I didn't realize like just how good he was this season. Like, he had a pretty good year. So once again, real quickly, MVP, I got Joel Embiid. Coach of the Year, I got Mike Brown. Defensive Player of the Year, I got Jaren Jackson Jr. Rookie of the Year, I got Pablo Banchero. And Sixth Man of the Year, I got Emmanuel Quickly. Get in the comments and let me know what you guys think, who you guys think should win these awards. For the All-NBA team, I'm going to go through my teams real quick. First team, I got Donovan Mitchell at guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at guard. I got Jason Tatum at forward. I got Giannis at forward, and I have Joel Embiid at center. Real simple. Donovan Mitchell having a hell of a season. Has pretty much been the catalyst, the leader that the Cleveland Cavaliers have needed. They've been missing that kind of guy since LeBron left, and I just think that his shooting splits are amazing. He's shooting close to 50% from the field this year, close to 40% from three. And Garland and Mobley are great young players. Jarrett Allen is a good center. There's pieces there. They competed last year. They lost in the play-in tournament. But you need that piece that takes you over the top. And Donovan Mitchell is that guy that, like, makes them, like, legitimately a threat. Like, you're not going to beat Boston. You're not going to beat Milwaukee. You're probably not going to beat Philadelphia. But with Donovan Mitchell, the other team is at least scared. And that's worth something. It's worth something to have a guy on your team who's balling out so hard that even the best teams in the NBA look at your team and go, I don't really know if we want to play them, because they have this guy that can just do whatever he wants at any point in time. And he had a 71-point game. Like, he's just ridiculous. So give me Donovan Mitchell at the guard spot. SGA, look, over 30 points per game this season. OKC in the play-in tournament, they're competing at a high level, a lot higher level than the odds makers and all the pundits expected them to be at this point in their franchise's timeline. And it's all because of SGA. I mean, he defends, he scores, he passes, he does everything for this team. And he had a great quote where he was like, refs have a hard job. I don't really want to argue with refs or go back and forth with them too much. And I just thought that was dope, because when these players argue with the refs, it's not like the refs change the call afterwards. Like, you're just arguing and letting off some steam, and nothing really comes of that. And you're not, if you're trying to be shrewd, you want to be on the good side of these refs. And SGA is a guy who tries to get to the foul line a lot. He's always driving. He leads the NBA in drives per game, which is just like another reason why he should be on this team. I mean, he's always attacking the basket. So with SGA, showing love to the referees and going about it with the referees, having that type of relationship with the referees, going about his business in that manner, I think that's really smart, and I like that. And SGA at guard, I think it's pretty clear cut. Like if you want to say Steph Curry, Luca, these other guys, bigger names, I get it, but I think you're pretty much just saying that off a name brand. I have those guys on like second and third team stuff, but this season Donovan Mitchell and SGA at the guard spots just makes sense. I got Tatum at forward, Giannis at forward, Embiid at center. I think those are self-explanatory. Unfortunately for Jokic, you can only have one center in there, so Embiid's going to be the center for me in the first team. Second team, I got Jalen Brunson, Steph Curry, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Davis, and Nikola Jokic. And just to start with Nikola Jokic, like I said, it's just the way that it plays out. He has to be second team. I thought Anthony Davis at forward really deserved it, and I know he technically plays mostly center, but I had to find a way to fit him in here because he's really the reason why the Lakers are, back in the mix and have a chance to, make a run in the playoffs. Even though I don't think that the Lakers being a play-in team necessarily means that they're going to go super deep in the playoffs, but he's the reason why they have life and that they have an opportunity because he's just been so dominant. He's been playing like a top 5, top 10 player since he's come back. So I got to put him in there. I got Jaylen Brown in the other forward spot. Jaylen Brown, surprisingly, even though he starts as shooting guard, he plays a lot of minutes for them at small forward, especially in their second unit in the second quarter. Like Jason Tatum will play the whole first quarter, and then in the second quarter to start, it'll be like Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, and Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown, a lot of nights when Jason Tatum doesn't have it, you guys know this. Anybody who watches the Boston Celtics, he'll like carry them when Jason Tatum is kind of struggling, or like because Jason Tatum gets to the free throw line and because he makes threes. And he takes so many threes. His counting stats are going to look good. He's going to put up the numbers because he's just that good of a player where he can put up some numbers. But they're not always going to be efficient. They're not always going to come in the best manner. And when you talk about just like putting the ball in the basket and scoring at a high level and doing it efficiently, like Jaylen Brown, I think he was at like 48% this season from the field. Like he's just a bucket getter, and he's been so consistent for the Boston Celtics, who have been such a good team this season, that I have to put him in there. Steph Curry at guard. I mean, the numbers are crazy. 36 and 6. Um, it's just ridiculous. He's still doing it at an elite level at this stage in his career. It's just amazing to watch. But he didn't play enough games, really. He didn't play as many games as you would like. He was out. And also the team, it just underperformed. Like the team was horrible defensively, and he probably wasn't like locking down or helping with that. I mean, I don't think anybody would say like, oh yeah, Steph Curry did his part on defense, but everybody else was getting blown by. Like, he has to wear that. His team was horrible defensively. His team was horrible on the road, and because of that, it's hard to put him on the first team over guys who were just like super consistent from start to finish and played a ton of games. So Steph Curry second team, hell of a season. Jalen Brunson second team. Look, you got to get a Knick in there because the Knicks are having an up year. The Knicks are playing good this season. And Jalen Brunson is the reason why. It's not Randall. I know people want Randall to be on the All NBA team, but I have to go Jalen Brunson because Jalen Brunson is the new addition that came in. And in my time watching basketball, I've never seen the Knicks have such a calming presence. Like the Knicks are a calm team. Like they're calm, they're steady, they're poised, and it's all because their leader is. Jalen Brunson is the leader. He's the guy anchoring the ship. It's just like having like a really, really good quarterback. Like he might not be Tom Brady or he might not be like Peyton Manning or something, but it's almost like having like Drew Brees during his Saints years. Like it's like having that at quarterback. It's like this guy, he might not have a cannon arm, but he's going to make all the right throws. He's not really going to turn the ball over. His completion percentage is going to be high. Like Jalen Brunson is just doing everything he's supposed to do, and you have to reward that. So I put Jalen Brunson on the second team. It's probably higher than most people would. Most people probably have him third team, or they probably have Randall in and Brunson out, but I just wasn't going to do that. So Jalen Brunson, second team for me. Hell of a season. And for the third team, I went Luka, Drew Holiday, Jimmy Butler, LeBron, and Sabonis. LeBron's counting stats are incredible this year. I didn't realize quite how high his numbers are. Like he had like 38 and 7 this season and shot over 50% from the field. So even though it doesn't look as good as it used to, and even though I'm not that crazy about LeBron, you guys know I'm not the biggest LeBron fan in the world. The counting stats are just ridiculous, and the Lakers are in the mix, so I got to reward them. I wanted to try to get Kawhi in there, but LeBron's stats are just way better than Kawhi, and their record is like the same, so there's no edge for Kawhi. Plus, LeBron, I think, played more games. Actually, I don't know. I mean, they both missed some time. Um, but Kevin Durant, LeBron definitely played more games than Kevin Durant, even though Kevin Durant's stats are incredible. Like, if KD played enough games, he would have been first team, but he would have been first team over Tatum in my opinion, but he just didn't play enough. So got to go with LeBron on the third team. Jimmy Butler had a pretty good season. When you look at the Miami Heat, so many players on that team are struggling, but the only reason why they've stayed afloat is because of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Like Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler Hero are having pretty good seasons, and then everybody else is just having like their worst season ever on that team. So Jimmy has been real good for that team. We know what Jimmy does on the defensive end. It's just incredible. And we know that Jimmy Butler is a real clutch player and is going to do a lot of things that you're not going to see on the stat sheet in the clutch. And Miami is a team that's always in close games, and they have a pretty good record in those close games, and he's their closer. So I got to give him kudos for that. Jimmy Butler, third team for me at the forward position. In guards, Luka, I'm not really going to get into it. The stats are incredible, but you know what they did at the end of the season, just tanking, like they're horrible. The Mavs suck. I can't really reward a team and a guy that are just losing and that don't have it all figured out. Like they're just completely lost. So I can't reward that too much. Maybe that's a little bit of recency bias, but um, the counting stats are crazy. So I'm gonna get him in there as a top 15 guy. I had a guy tell me on Twitter that he actually thought that Luka shouldn't be on the All NBA team, and I understand that because he didn't win, and he was kind of a cancer for his team in a lot of ways, even though people don't want to say it. But the counting stats are just so good that I can't leave him off of being a top 15 player in this season for like De'Aaron Fox or Anthony Edwards. Like Anthony Edwards, the Timberwolves were just a little too up and down and inconsistent for me to get a player from that team on there. But he did have a good year. And with De'Aaron Fox, I already have Sabonis in on the third team. And I think Sabonis is the best player on that team. He is the heartbeat. Everything flows through Sabonis with those dribble handoffs and him being that like point center. Sabonis is pretty much like a Draymond Green who can actually score though, and not on defense. Like Draymond's an elite defender. Sabonis is a stiff on defense, but I'm talking about on offense. Like when Draymond does those dribble handoffs to Steph and those kind of things, and sometimes he fakes it and keeps it, and he's at the top of the key just throwing dimes and stuff like that. Like Sabonis does that, but he can also hit that jumper when he's out there and you have to guard him, and he can also drive by you and he'll do a spin move and get in the post a little bit. Like he's like if Draymond just had like a super bag and just like great touch. Like he's like a baby Jokic in a lot of ways, honestly. That's the real comp. But Drew Holiday's the other guard, the last guy on the third team. He's the second best player on the team with the best record. He's locking up on the defensive end. On the offensive side, he's putting up good numbers. He's getting you like 20 points a game on pretty efficient shooting, like better efficiency than he has in previous years. Um, which is impressive because Drew Holiday for me was a guy who would go like 5 for 20, but he played lockdown defense, so you would just deal with him taking those shots, and he would shoot a little bit too much for my liking. But now it's like, hey, you'll take it because he's scoring on top of giving you all this great defense. You could argue he's the best two-way player in the NBA. Now the nod probably goes to Giannis, his teammate, because I got Giannis first team, and Giannis is just incredible. But the load that Drew Holiday is given on the defensive end every single night, he's asked to do a lot, and he's like one of the only guys in the NBA who just fights through screens and says like, I'm just locking you up, and you can try to run and hide and go through these cuts and take a screen here and there, but it's not really gonna matter. I'm just gonna sit here and lock you up, and I'm just gonna have you in jail. So yeah, those are my all NBA teams this year. Top 15 players. Some really great players like De'Aaron Fox. Once again, De'Aaron Fox, Anthony Edwards. Some really great players who aren't going to make the list every year. Julius Randle, but you know, I just think these three teams are an accurate depiction of what occurred this season in the NBA. All right, so moving off of that and moving on to the NBA playoffs. Before we get the playoffs, we actually get the play in. So I'm going to save my playoff thoughts for the next video, and I'm going to give you guys my play in thoughts for these next couple games. Tomorrow, April 11th, we got the Atlanta Hawks at the Miami Heat. The Hawks are 5.5-point dogs on the road. Um, I don't know so much with the spread what I want to do here, but I do like Miami to win this game. I have a hard time imagining Miami is going to let up in a must-win game. Miami lets up all the time, but in must-win games, you kind of trust Spoelstra, Riley, Butler, Bam. You trust these guys when it matters to take care of a team, especially a team like the Atlanta Hawks, who are just kind of like, like the Hawks are they're just mid. They're the definition of mid. So for those of you who like doing parlays or like, I don't know, buying points or teasing or doing whatever, I mean, I could see Miami having some value, adding them as like an extra leg on a ticket or something. But as far as laying the points, I don't know, just because Miami isn't really a high scoring team. And I feel like Atlanta was staying in the games and even covering underdog lines against the Miami Heat earlier this season. So it is interesting. I would take the Heat to win that game, but just from an odds perspective, I don't really know what to do with that. The other game tomorrow night, the Minnesota Timberwolves at the Los Angeles Lakers. Look, Minnesota missing Rudy Gobert, missing Kyle Anderson. I thought it was funny, not missing Kyle Anderson, missing Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. I thought it was funny that Draymond Green was doing a podcast about Rudy Gobert throwing a punch at Kyle Anderson. Like, he's just not the right person to be making a podcast about someone punching their teammate. But, Minnesota's going to be shorthanded. Naj Reid is already hurt. I suspect that the starting lineup is going to be Mike Conley, Edwards. Taurean Prince probably starts at small forward, is what I would assume. Kyle Anderson at power forward with Cat at center. For the Lakers, we know what they're going to do. They're going to feed Anthony Davis the ball in the half-court set. LeBron's going to be attacking the basket, maybe shooting threes sometimes. LeBron has gotten a little complacent this year where like he'll shoot more threes instead of attacking the basket as much, but he's still going to attack. D'Angelo Russell is going to be doing the little pick and roll thing. Sometimes they're going to give it to Reeves and he's going to try to get to the line. But the spread for this game, the Lakers are like 7.5, 8-point favorites at home. I just think that's a little too much. I think people are assuming, like, hey, the Lakers are rolling right now. The Lakers are getting hot at the right time. It's a home game. The Lakers have been winning these home games. The Minnesota Timberwolves are falling apart. They're missing a few of their guys. But, first off with the Minnesota point, Rudy Gobert really hurts your offense when he's out there, and I just think that him being gone and having Cat at center is just going to open things up for a lot of their guys. Like now Conley, Edwards, Anderson, like these guys are going to drive and they're going to have a lot more space. So I think this could help Minnesota's offense. The total for the game is 231.5, so it kind of speaks to a little bit of a high scoring game. So I kind of think this is going to help Minnesota's offense. And, it'd be nice to have Naj Reid, but not having McDaniels hurts, but Kyle Anderson is a pretty good defender, and Taurean Prince is pretty long. So I think those guys can hold up just for a game. I'm not saying that Minnesota is going to go into LA and win the game, but they've been very good at covering the spread as an underdog, and they've been very good just, just competing on the road and competing on the West Coast in particular. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Minnesota Timberwolves came into LA tomorrow and kept the game close and competed a lot more than people expect. And with the Los Angeles Lakers, I think people just they look at like, oh, Anthony Davis and the Lakers, they were winning all these home games. Well, they were winning without LeBron. They were winning as underdogs or as 1 point favorites. Like they were catching weak teams or teams missing players, like the Suns missing KD and the Grizzlies missing Ja Morant. And I had the Lakers both those games when Ja was out and when KD was out, and like that was a good time to buy the Lakers. Like there was no LeBron and AD was just carrying them the victories at home. They were clicking at that time, but um, you know, taking the Lakers as a big favorite is just an environment that we haven't seen. Like now, it just feels a little too inflated. It feels a little too like just heavy, and it just feels like the public is going to be all over it, thinking that hey, Minnesota's depleted and the Lakers are just popping. The Lakers are hot at the right time, and I would just watch out for that. Like, I'm not going to put out an official pick yet. You guys can check my Twitter and my Instagram tomorrow. But I have to say that the top play looks like it's going to be Minnesota to keep it within the number. Like Minnesota plus 7.5, plus 8. I'm not mad at that, honestly. I'm not mad at that. I know we don't have a lot of data on how they look without Rudy and with Cat at the 5 and how that's going to play out, but just the fact that these guys won the game after all that drama happened against New Orleans and Ingram was scorching hot and the Wolves were able to come together and still win that game. I think these guys are just going to give the front office a big FU and show them that they can ball out even without Gobert and that they didn't need the trade in the first place. So I like Minnesota tomorrow. So that would be the top play. Once again, make sure to check out to see if I end up going official with that. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Turn the notifications on so you can see once I post the bets. So that'll be all for today. I'll come back in a couple of days and give out my picks on all the playoff series, who I think is going to win the playoff series. If I have any bets that I like for game one on the sides of the totals. So stay tuned for that. Once again, I appreciate you all. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share the videos. Until next time, peace.